Well, I think, my experience with Title IX has been kind of interesting because when I was a college basketball player in the late 90s, uh, what it was then and what it is now, even though Title IX was, 20 years old at that point or 30 years old, it still wasn't where it is now. And we still have a long ways to go. So I feel like I've had a front row seat for the progress that we've made. I've told different stories of my experiences as a college basketball player versus, a men's college basketball player, just in terms of, opportunities, experiences, budget, gear, food, everything was just so much less than what the men got. And not just, a bag of stuff, but just the experiences were just different. They were lesser. And, to come as far as we've come now has been pretty cool to watch. I sit in this office, it's incredible. And, that is not lost on me, and women's basketball, women's sports. I think our leadership here in this athletic department values women's athletics. And I always want to be working somewhere where it matters, and it matters here. And I think we all would admit it still has a ways to go. And, from how I can only speak from basketball, but how women's basketball is covered, portrayed in the media, we still have a long ways to go. But it's been kind of cool to watch just over the years, just slowly things get better and better, and still room to grow.
You did touch on it a little bit, but maybe go into a little bit more detail about how Title IX has changed and progressed from when you were playing to being a coach now.
Well, like I said, and these are just little things and I know our budgets were not even on the same planet, from what they are now to what they were, and we're at the highest level in terms of Power 5. And so, we're not wanting for a whole lot. I'm not trying to complain about that. But even if you compare, a women's budget to a men's budget, it's still different. But back then, I'm going to date myself, it was really different, from us getting one pair of shoes and the men's team getting 5. But I think, or post-game meals, we get peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and they get, to go out to go out to dinner after games. But what I think the most kind of shocking thing about that was, when I was 18, 19, 20, I didn't think anything of it. When I was in high school, and I know this still exists, there was the girls' gym in my high school, which was kind of the junky, old, dilapidated, old gym. And then the boys' gym, which was the nice new one. And we never thought anything of it, of why do we call it that? Right. Like, and going into college and those disparities, I guess the shocking, sad, kind of interesting thing is I never thought anything of it. I never thought this isn't right, because that's just the way it was. And it's just the way it is. And you were kind of brought up like, well, that's, men's basketball is more important. And that was just kind of the slow drip that we girls had been told our whole lives. And, the thought of that happening now, it's kind of comical. Like if our girls got one pair of shoes and the boys got 5, like there'd be an uproar, because they're just more aware of it. They're more conscious of, equality. And so that part's been cool to see, just the process and the evolution of just the mindset more than anything, just of, and my personal belief on it too is I don't want to take anything from the men so that we're equal. I think it needs to be, a high tide rises all ships. So it's not to take from men to give to women. It's how can we get women up to the level of support that the men have. And I think that's a clear distinction. I think there's some paranoia about like, oh, that just means it's coming from I'm not saying that at all. And I want our men to be as supported and funded and all of the things. But I want to be just as much as them. So that I think is a key thing that I've learned along the way too.
What do you wish people maybe understood or appreciated better about Title IX and the student athletes it helps?
Well, I think just that. I think people need to understand that those advocating for equality are not advocating for taking away from men opportunities and exposure and all that for men. It's about equality. It's not about bringing somebody down so that you're at their level. It's about bringing you up so that you're at their level. And I think that's the biggest misconception that I've, interfaced with, and then I think just the perception that women's sports are exciting, they're valuable. More girls drop out of sports younger than boys do. And all the research indicates that girls that stay involved in sports are, they do better in school, they do better socially, they go on and they become leaders in their vocations. I think beyond just the how many pairs of shoes do you get, it's about the opportunities for young girls to pursue something that boys get more of an opportunity to pursue. And just the more we can normalize that it can be incredibly feminine and to be strong and fast and all those things. I think, it doesn't mean you're trying to be like guys. We're trying to be the best women and girls that we can be.
Looking at Title IX as it stands today, what are some improvements and progressions you think still need to happen?
That's a touchy one. Again, I think, the funding needs to be equal. In terms of the budgets that are allocated, I think needs to be equal. And again, not trying to take from the men so that we're equal, rise ours so that we're equal to the men. And it can be all sorts of things. I think how women's sports is portrayed in the media needs to shift. And that's, I think there are pockets where women's athletics is equal. If you look at tennis, I think that's a sport where we're not discussing the fact that they're women, it's just covered in a way. But, interesting in terms of like men's and women's basketball, again, I can speak for that. Like, for whatever reason, we have decided as a society that we have to compare it apples to apples. Like if you're watching Serena Williams kick tail, you're not under your breath saying, she couldn't beat Roger Federer, right? Like, well, she doesn't hit it as hard as Nadal. It's like, well, yeah, she's playing a different game. Or if you're watching the Women's World Cup in soccer and, we all got feverishly behind that and it was so fun and we all were just on board. No one was talking about, well, they wouldn't beat the men. Well, they're not as fast as the men. It's like, but yet in basketball, the media coverage still kind of lands on that. Like, oh, well, and I don't know why we do that. We compare them in a apples to apples when it's really it's a different game in terms of how it's played. Just in terms of maybe kind of more below the rim, but it's still exciting in its own different way. So I think just portrayal of, sports, and then just the market, just the media rights that women's sports get. It's always connected to the men. It's always connected to, this is in professional sports, but it's always kind of, a package deal. And I think we're getting to the point where we need to start, being marketed like grass grows where you water it. And, the sports will grow if you water it with the proper television contracts and the marketing and all that kind of stuff. So we still have a ways to go, but certainly have made leaps and bounds in the last 20 years.
Talk about the University of Utah's celebration of 50 years of Title IX. What does that mean to you and what does that mean to your student athletes?
Well, I think I'm so appreciative of their support of this event and making it a priority and making it a big deal. And 50 years is a long time. And I think we all can sit here and say that we still got a ways to go, and we do. But, I am so in awe of those women that coached during that time and in the 80s and 90s, and that have, they really are the pioneers of this movement. When there really wasn't any other reason other than because you think it's the right thing to do to fight that fight. And they did. And so it'll be really fun to celebrate some of those women. And I think for our student athletes, I think it's really important for them to understand the history. Because like I said, they don't know any different, which I'm grateful for. But I think you have to respect and understand and learn the history of how did we get here? How did we get in this incredible facility? How did we get to be playing in front of thousands of fans and, wear these incredible outfits and like all the stuff that is. It certainly wasn't that way not that long ago. And so I think the impact can be pretty cool for our players to just kind of understand that a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into be giving them these opportunities.
How important do you think it is that a sport like football is taking time out of their game to recognize the accomplishments of female student athletes through the years?
I think it's awesome. Our football team, I mean, you can't, sorry, there's a plane. You hear that?
I can't hear it.
Oh, good. Okay. I feel like it's going to land on the roof. So I'll start over here. I think it's the hospital helicopter traffic.
Yeah.
I think our football team, they are the hand that feeds us all. And even so, they carry that program with such, inclusion of us all. And I think that's what makes Utah so cool. This athletic department, this university is, there's a blue collar, there's a family atmosphere that is very unique. I mean, I talk to my colleagues and it's not like that at most places. And, like the culture that they've set up and, respecting women and honoring the athletes. I just think it speaks a lot about how they conduct business and how important it is for all of us and how much we appreciate it.
You also briefly brought that up. They have signs all over the facility that say like rule number 1 is respect women, and they kind of get made fun of for that. But if it was so obvious,
right,
if there wouldn't be an issue. Talk about, just making such a concerted effort to instill that and kind of lead the charge on that.
I have so much respect for that. And I think, that there is, if you watch Sports Center, at some point during the day, something's going to come up with some sort of, sexual harassment, domestic violence, all these kind of things in professional sports and even in college sometimes. And for our flagship program and, kind of the flagship program of the state, to take ownership and responsibility in that area. I just have so much respect for them and it matters. And whether people think it doesn't, it does. And, as women, we see that and it like, we appreciate it. And, it goes farther than just a sign on the wall. It's a whole mentality of, expectations. And I really appreciate it.
Not many universities are necessarily known for their women's sports. However, Utah has one of the most prominent female sport brands in the country with the Red Rocks. What is it like having that example in your own backyard and knowing it can be done?
Yeah, well, that was a big reason why I took this job is, I think they figured out the blueprint of how to get the community behind them. And I've talked a lot with Greg Marsden and tried to pick his brain and, things have changed a lot even since then. But man, that guy's smart and he figured it out. And then, with Megan and Tom Farden and, Megan had that interim period too. And then Tom's taken it over, but what they have been able to achieve, with the recruiting, with the fan base, and just the consistent excellence is inspiring and to exactly right. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to be here. Cause it's like, well, we can do that. We can do that here. I think Salt Lake City is a sports town. We just need women's basketball to become relevant in this community. And that's what we're doing.
Finally, where do you see the future of women and girls in sports going next? What's the next big horizon for us?
That's a great question, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I don't know what it will be. My hope for the future of girls and women's sport is that it becomes the thing to do and the thing to cover and the thing to promote and market and support and get behind as a society. I think even if, your thing isn't to watch women's soccer, if you have daughters, you're going to want them to play sports and be healthy and active and confident and be a part of a team and all the things that sport is for boys and girls. I'm hoping that it becomes something that girls feel just as much opportunity, excitement, engagement from community members and fans that the boys feel. And I want the boys to get as much as they can get too. I think every kid needs something that they feel good about themselves for. And sports is an incredible avenue for that.